Welcome, everybody. I am Ryan Christoi. I am technically the managing partner at KRT Marketing, but I am more appropriately the chief nerd. I'm a nerd. My dog's a nerd. On my birthday, my team makes me Excel cakes and decorates the office with pivot tables and spreadsheets.
And I'm Eric Holwell. I'm the Vice President of Operations over at KRT, but I'm also known as the Chief Balding Nerd. As we all know, real nerds go bald. And then I've been a nerd my whole life. When I was 4 years old, I took a pretty nerd picture. It's on the back of my business card if you get one. And last year I decided to dress up as my 4-year-old self for Halloween and recreate that. Ryan and I are also proud fathers of 2 girls each, and we're raising future nerds.
So the format of today is we're going to get geeky. This was billed as a tactical how-to. I know there's a lot of great sessions here this week that are about forward-looking, what's to come, but this is really current state type stuff. And current state, even though Dan got a big laugh about spreadsheets being the old way, I mean, that's a very practical way of measuring metrics analytics, and you're going to hear more about spreadsheets. And I also think it's amusing that those Excel licenses that Microsoft had is ultimately what paid for LinkedIn. So Dan, may be careful when you're joking around. But we have some easy chips for newbies. We've got prizes on social. And one of the things we want to do is we created a microsite and a bunch of templates. So krtmarketing.com/talent connect. I'll flash this at the end, but this has not only our deck from today, but several of the templates that we're going to be going through and sharing with you. Our goal is to get you back to the office on Monday with some actionable insights and some things that you can hopefully put into practice. Check us out on social. Obviously, LinkedIn's a great place to catch us, but we also have GeoFence, the conference center, with a Snapchat filter. Would love to see you in your nerdy glasses with our filter later on, and Adriana, who is our head of social media, will be monitoring, and there will certainly be some prizes or some props for some of the better photos. So, all right, who's ready to get geeky?
I am.
Allow me to introduce you to Elise. Elise is an environmental planner at CH2M. She was hired here this past June. But we don't really care so much about what Elise is up to currently. We want to look back at the 18 months prior to her accepting that offer, looking at the candidate journey, or more appropriately, the Elise journey. So December 2015, Elise viewed a CH2M job on LinkedIn. A couple months later, she viewed another. A month after that, another. Over the span of 18 months, Elise looked at 9 different job postings. She checked out 18 different employee profiles. She clicked on a recruitment ad and ultimately spent some time on the careers page that CH2M has on LinkedIn.
Not only that, Elise didn't just use LinkedIn. She used other job boards, LinkedIn, but she used Indeed, Glassdoor, Fairy Godboss, and these are the sites that she remembered. She actually used a variety of other sources. And there was one site she visited last. It was the site before she applied for the job that she eventually was hired for. That was the career site. Now, Elise used over 10 different sources. She viewed multiple jobs. There were over 30 different touch points, but the career site was the source of hire in the ATS report. Now, you're thinking, wow, we know a lot about Elise. That's kind of creepy. But
nerds are creepy, Eric.
Yeah. So just to let you know, we interviewed Elise. LinkedIn interviewed Elise. We worked with a data scientist at LinkedIn. We worked with CH2M. We viewed their ATS report to get all that information. So it was a lot of work. We don't know that much information about everybody.
So the candidate journey, or as we like to call,
the long and winding road.
The long and winding road. It's a lot of twists and turns. Today's candidate journey is more complex than ever before. Candidates are employing more tools and sites and research than they ever have. Studies are showing that on average anywhere from 12 to 18, or we saw in Elise's case that she was using over 30 different touch points before finally accepting that offer. And companies who try to understand and explore every single source and every potential path that brought a candidate to you will drive you crazy. You're never going to be able to do it, and you'll fall into the trap of what many of us know as analysis paralysis, and you spend so much time overanalyzing and overthinking and not taking enough action. And so, what we're really trying to promote is an idea that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, good enough is just fine.
That sounds pretty lazy. Yeah.
My high school football coach would have not supported this mantra, but good enough, we think, is the point where diminishing returns begin to happen. In the early stages of looking at metrics and analytics, it's very, very fruitful. There's a lot of insights to be drawn. There's a lot that can be done. But you get to a point where those efforts of really going down rabbit holes and searching are no longer giving you the same value that they did in the early stages. Many of you here know about Pareto principle, that 20% of the efforts are giving you 80% of the yield. And that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Now, this is not just a challenge for the talent acquisition industry. The consumer world is still trying to figure it out. Marketing is trying to figure it out in your companies that you work for. The digital age has made it very complicated. There are so many different touch points that people touch on. These are recent articles about how marketers are finding it such a challenge to take all the data that they have and make sense of it.
We all know we want to avoid HIPPO, or the highest paid person's opinion. Jeff hit on this morning, that it's great when he's in a meeting and there's insights or anecdotes being thrown around, but he wants to see the data. And there's a great Barksdale quote: if we have data, let's look at data. If while we have our opinions, then we'll go with mine. And you guys see this quite a bit. And it's not
I see it every day.
My opinion is always.
Yeah.
It's not that you and your recruiters and your teams don't have great instincts and gut feelings on things, but you need the insights to be able to back it up, to support it, to be able to make business cases. And we think that's where this cross-section happens, where insights meet instincts. And this is obviously the theme of this conference here that we're all at. And it's at this crossroad that you'll find today's must-have recruitment analytics that we hope to share with you today.
So this is a complicated topic, right? We're all trying to figure it out. Nobody has a silver bullet. And so we want to keep it organized. Keeping it organized, we like to create acronyms in the marketing world. And so our acronym today is COA. COA stands for Collect, Organize, and Action. And we feel that data and analytics can be approached in these three phases. These three phases are a cycle. You're going to collect data. You're going to take the data that you collect and organize it, and from there you're going to take action, and then it happens over and over and over again. So let's look at collect. This is where you identify the ecosystem, your own ecosystem, that candidate ecosystem, and you learn what to track and how to track it here. So we created this tracking canvas. This is a macro view of the world of analytics and talent acquisition. And it's noisy out there. And there's all kinds of data. But let's look at how it does from a micro level. And you start with the sourcing tools. And in the sourcing tools, you're going to collect data points that are different from the other micro views. So here you're collecting searches and profile views and emails or in-mails that you send out and the conversions of those. Moving over to media, you're going to track impressions, clicks, and completed applications. And media is important because it's a big chunk of your budget, most likely. Moving over to social, now you're tracking other data points. There's this little site called LinkedIn.com that you can track how many followers you have, how many engagements are happening, employee reviews with Glassdoor. A big piece of this canvas, and we made it big on purpose because a lot of that information, a lot of channels drive candidates back to your career site and your ATS. And here you're tracking different data points, tracking visits, sessions, the pages that candidates visit, and apply starts. And over on the ATS, you're tracking completed applications, and then some of the real rich data that we really want to know how it's performing, like how many applications were qualified and hires. You also probably have a CRM. And here you're going to be tracking how many opt-ins you're receiving every week, every month, how many emails or text messages you're sending out to this audience, and those conversion rates. The employee referral program, whether it's an official program or unofficial, you're going to track how many referrals were made, how many of those referrals were hired, and the fees that you're paying out for each referral. And finally, on this canvas that kind of outlines this massive ecosystem, you're going to be tracking data that is third-party data. It's not data that you're collecting, but data that's available for you to use for your marketing programs. So this data is going to include competitive analysis. It's going to have supply and demand data and industry benchmarks.
And the forthcoming talent insights that we saw this morning, I mean, those kind of data points as well. The point being, I think, going back to the canvas, is it's very complicated, and we're excited that LinkedIn has the hiring platform coming out, and Dan emphasized, several times that, initially it's for small teams with maybe a little bit more simplistic environments, but most of the enterprise customers, or all the enterprise customers that we work with, have very complicated ecosystems. There's a lot of different tools. You're trying to mash up a lot of different data points, and there's no easy way to really do this currently, and not that that's not going to change, but current state. There's a lot out there. One of the downloads we've made available is a little bit of a key or an index. So we'd encourage all of you to go through all the available marketing metrics that are out there, understand what are you tracking today, and where is that data coming from. So we've also indexed where the more common places that those data points are found. Is it the ATS? Is it your website? Is it your CRM? Is it another tool? But it's really important for companies to get that baseline to understand exactly what is being tracked in their current state. There are tracking tools out there. Today's session is not about giving you a whole breakdown and recommendation of the tracking tools, but I'm sure many of you have things like Google Analytics or Adobe Insights on your website, your career site. Many of you, I'm sure, are using some of the analytics tools that are out there, but you're going to need some tools, some sort of tools, and you probably have some today. But as important as having tools is what you're putting into those tools. Deal breaker, and I hope that the vast majority of you in this room are auto-populating sources into your ATS, but I guarantee there are some that are probably not. This is 101 type stuff. You can't possibly go in and analyze your data if you're not getting good, clean data into it. The idea of garbage in, garbage out. So really understanding what the protocols are for auto-populating source tracking in, getting away from the self-selected candidate data. Then you're going to need some other protocols as well. Here's an example of how a URL builder would work with Google Analytics and Taleo. But the point here is really about consistency with naming conventions. We see oftentimes that, a company may have a system for collecting source traffic. They call things differently. It might be a LinkedIn posting one day and then a LinkedIn slot the next. You need to call it by the same exact name every time if you're going to be able to pull this in and then aggregate it in any sort of meaningful way. There's URL builders out there. That's the easy button type stuff. Or if you're geeks like us, you can create your own URL builder that would concatenate Google Analytic type tags with ATS tags. And so that's out on the site. And what's important here is anybody in your organization that is putting links out on the web, whether it's they're posting jobs or placing banner ad campaigns or sending links to candidates to draw them back to your site, they need to follow this system. Otherwise, there's all that activity that will just be a big blind spot for you. So things like even in your in-mails, if you're sending in-mails and directing people back to the career site, using a tag link and turning that into a bit.ly is certainly something that would be very, very important. Who can tell me what this man, John Stockton, is known for?
Short shorts.
He is known for the shortest shorts in NBA history, Eric, but the correct answer for today's presentation is the assist. So when you think about source of influence, you want to think about Stockton. He was the assist man. He was feeding Karl Malone, the mailman. The mailman, though, was getting all the credit. He was the one dunking the basket and dunking the ball. Dunking the basket sounded pretty nerdy right there. But Malone was getting all the credit, like that career site source in the ATS, but it was without Stockton, you've never been able to get it done. So when you think back to the Elise journey, you think about all those different touch points that were the assist. How many Stockton-type passes did it take before ultimately that?
Stockton's a workhorse, man.
Before Malone came in or the career site came in and ultimately got all the credit for the score. But the best-in-class companies are looking at assisted conversions. This is something, we're obviously using our client's CH2M. I see Ryan Cook in the back of the room. When I first met Ryan 5 years ago, he was the first guy that I knew who was looking at this type of activity, source of influence, studying candidates who were applying from multiple sources and having a scoring system for not just looking at the last conversion point, but all of the others that influenced it. This is really, really important. Once you have a system to model that, you can look at it different ways. Current attribution modeling is typically that the last source, the career site, gets 100%. You can switch that to the first interaction, giving the first source, in our example, LinkedIn, all of the credit. You can give all the touch points equal credit. We call this the T-ball methodology. Everybody gets a trophy. Or you can come up with some sort of position-based custom methodology that makes sense. The point being is when you have good, clean data coming in, you can model it in whatever way that makes most sense to your business. If you can't or don't have the resources to do as I just described, a good place to start is the LinkedIn Impact Report. I mean, hopefully your reps are providing you with those, but these are a great place to start looking at least candidate behavior on the LinkedIn system. Obviously, it's specific to just that environment, but something that you can be looking at.
So once you collect the data, you've got to organize it. This is where it gets a little tricky. So we're going to look at tools to organize data, and we're going to also, this is where when you're organizing data, you're trying to ask a question. So this is where you're going to ask yourself, what problem are we trying to solve, which could help map out how you're going to organize that data. So we go back to that canvas, and there are all types of different data, and you think of each one as a little bucket of data. They're all different. They're all telling us different stories. And so the tools that you would use to organize data like this. Now, there was a huge laugh in a keynote that Dan Spiro did, making fun of, you already touched on this, making fun of Excel, but we all use Excel, right? And we use Excel all the time, and so common tools, especially if you're a smaller organization, this might be your tool of choice. And you can certainly gather that data and organize it in nice turnkey templates. But larger sets of data, millions of data points, millions of rows are not going to work in Excel. You're going to crash it. Now you're going to need to start organizing that data in a database like MySQL or a MongoDB. And then last but not least is becoming very important in our world, especially if you want to draw insights out of the data that you're collecting, are going to be visualization tools. We're a Tableau shop. We love Tableau, but there are other great tools out there. Google Data Studio and Domo are very popular. We see a lot of companies using those as well. One thing I wanted to emphasize real quick is just the ability to pivot data. Whether you're using a Tableau or Excel or Domo, understanding how data can pivot is important in analyzing data and drawing insights. If you don't know how to pivot, someone on your team should know how to pivot. And if nobody on your team knows how to pivot, that's okay, because LinkedIn owns a site called lynda.com. We use it all the time. All of our employees that we hire, if they come in as data experts, great. If not, we put them through 52 hours of painstaking training, and a big part of that is going through how to run pivots blindfolded with your hands tied behind your back. All we're doing is analyzing data every day. So on the microsite, we also have links to some tutorials on lynda.com that you can go through if you'd like to brush up the skills on pivoting. Let's look at actually organizing the data. When we approach this phase in COA, we always think of the data coming in as a funnel. Now, this isn't a funnel like this, but it's going from top to bottom. This is also where you ask those questions. What answers are we, or what questions do we need to answer? And the question could be, did our diversity campaign create a lift in diverse candidates? Or did our employer branding project create an increase in qualified candidates? In this case, I'm looking at more traffic. I'm looking at comparing a few things. And so the funnel that we have for this example, I'll walk you through. Starting at the very top, you're going to look at some easy data to capture. You've got searches, you've got clicks, you have impressions, you have completed applications. This data comes in daily, and you can use this data to make changes in your campaigns pretty quickly. Next up is going to be the post-application data, and typically from your ATS, but this data has some lag time. This data is going to be how many of those applications you received are qualified, and of course, the hire data. Quality to us is very important because you can only hire a certain amount of people, but your marketing campaigns are designed to drive in quality candidates. And we think it's one of the most important metrics out there when you're measuring if things are working or not working. And so there is always this question, what defines quality, which Ryan is going to dig into in just a second. So let's keep going through the funnel real quick, though. There are statistical ratios. We like to use these because they help us map out like future campaigns and what might be needed at the top of the funnel to get the yield at the bottom. And these are going to be how many clicks was it needed to generate one application, or how many applications on average are needed to generate a hire, how many percent-wise on average are qualified. And finally, we have these unit cost calculations that we always include in all of the marketing analytics that we're performing, which is like cost per application or cost per quality application. And then, of course, everybody wants a higher cost per hire. We can use these metrics to measure performance month over month and get time trends. And they're great for comparing various job boards, various job categories. So speaking of that, once you get all this data, you can have this macro view, like here's how everything is performing. But it's nice to be able to scale the data in a way that you can measure unique dimensions, like location, cost per application by location, cost per hire by location, by source. How did LinkedIn do compared to other sources? Time, month-over-month analysis, and then my favorite, job category. And once you get to a way that you can scale the data and measure these certain dimensions, you'll start to look and be able to compare how IT compares to finance, how it compares to customer service. And that's when you start filling in the data and you can start drawing conclusions from this data, which we'll get to in just a second. Let's first revisit that question.
So quality applications, this is probably the cheesiest slide we have in here today, but when we talk about the must-have recruitment marketing analytics of today, we think looking at a quality application is one of the most important things you can be doing, but it's also one of the hardest. It's different across every organization. So we spend a lot of time with clients understanding their application process and all the different dispositions in the ATS. So there's a lot of time spent on applications and cost per application. Then there's a lot of time spent at the offer or accept phase, and then it's and not a lot in between always. And so we think, picking a point, some point in your application process that you would deem that's a quality application. It might be the interview stage. It might be sent to hiring manager. It might be some other disposition that it's important to you. But the best companies are looking at this specifically for the reason that you want to hold your media sources and your ad agency and anybody who's delivering applicants to you. You want to hold them accountable to a quality application metric. Beyond a certain phase in your process, there's too much subjectivity. There's too many things that are out of the control of the providers that are delivering you candidates. Was there a fit with the hiring manager? Was there a cultural fit with the candidate? Are you paying enough in the marketplace? But you're asking for skill sets and a certain experience level, and if your media sources are delivering that, we think that that's something that ultimately you should be not only studying, but then optimizing against and understanding where are you getting your best cost per quality applications and going through it. We saw in yesterday's presentation, Enterprise, I saw that they're doing this. I'd love, show of hands, who has a quality application metric that they study closely in their organization? I know you, Ryan, and Chaz. Okay, all right. So this is an area that I think all of you can really take back to your companies and hopefully spend some time figuring out.
Now, we looked at organizing the data, and you need to visualize it. I bet, even looking at that sample table that we just looked at, you probably drew nothing from it. Like, what am I looking at here? And this is where visualizing really helps pull those insights out, pull those stories out. And, Brené Brown has this quote, not today, but she's made this quote in the past, and it's great. Maybe stories are just data with a soul. And I think all the data that we collect has a story. And it certainly has a soul. We just got to find it. Visualizing it is the way to go. And for example, we want to know how each source is performing for us. We've invested in 6 different sources. We need to make some comparisons here. We looked at that table. This is the same table we were looking at, by the way. And so now we can look at, all right, how many qualified applications did we receive by source? And what was the cost per application or cost per quality application for each source? And now we're starting to make some comparisons. There's a winner, there's a loser. Are they really losers though? And then you can make an average calculation to see which of these sources are coming above average and below average. And maybe you also set a goal. That pink line represents a goal. and maybe you want to compare, all right, at the beginning of the campaign, are we reaching our goals? Are we meeting expectations, or are we falling short? Very easy to put this together. I did it in Excel, heaven forbid. But then you can take these charts and create scorecards. And my favorite is creating scorecards for job categories. And so taking IT as an example, you can quickly look at IT and see how it's comparing to other job categories, if it's more expensive or less expensive. You can look and see how IT is doing for quality applications by source, the chart we just looked at, and then look at IT and see how it's performing by location. And real quickly, if you have a team working on IT recruiting, you know you have a scorecard that kind of gives you an idea of which markets and which sources are performing and which aren't. And then you could take that information and you could say, look, we need a deep dive in this market here because it's not performing well, and maybe it's a few sources. Now, that was a simple visualization, but we're a Tableau shop, and we love Tableau, and we love, we're working with a lot of data, and Tableau is a great tool when you're working with a lot of data to create some incredible dashboards for your teams and enable them to find those stories, find the aha moment, draw conclusions, and make adjustments to campaigns, or hand it off to their hiring managers to show them what's going on. You could start filtering data real easy. You could put laser sounds in it, and people will think you're really cool. Every time you click on it, it changes the data in a way you can view it differently. And I've got one more laser sound for you. Oh, we just looked at data for one state, by city, by job board, and it's real easy to do with a tool like Tableau.
Just to touch back, I think part of visualization too is being able to really get in and see the data or be the data. But oftentimes these spreadsheets get pretty static, and to be able to go in and try to hunt for and find some insights that maybe don't jump off the page. And so being able to easily manipulate and also give these dashboards, get them in the hands of the practitioners, some of the people who can impact decisions, people who are posting jobs or running ad campaigns or sourcing for candidates. Eric talked about getting organized. So this is a guy who's organized. This is Hunter. Hunter's one of the media analysts at KRT, and he's part of a new breed of recruitment marketers that we see entering the marketplace. We're hiring, in a lot of cases, not marketing backgrounds or business degrees. It's a lot of economics backgrounds. These are people who could go work at a trading desk on Wall Street, but instead they're studying recruitment marketing analytics. They're running programmatic campaigns. But we see this as part of a new breed of people that the best-in-class recruitment marketing organizations in-house will be hiring. I mean, we know many of you probably have folks like this today, but as we think about getting organized, it doesn't mean anything if you're not actioning against that. And so, quote, insight without action is worthless. So here we're going to get into the action. So maybe the most interesting part of the COA is, what are you going to do with all this data? At a very base analog level, you're going to make better contract decisions. You're using data today to obviously renew your annual contracts and to make decisions. But obviously, the more quality data you can get into that process, the more informed decisions you can make, and allow your investment to go with those providers that are giving you results. And for those who are not,
you get nothing. Good day, sir.
He's been wanting to say that all week.
Kind of looks like me.
Recruiter seat optimization. You guys are spending a lot of money on CV licenses and LinkedIn recruiter seats, and they're extremely powerful tools, but they need to be in the right hands. So being able to study where you're getting your performance and kind of a use it or lose it type mentality if somebody's not using their seat. So again, pretty rudimentary, but important. Action against this. Look at your recruiter seat license and your other database tools regularly, and not only switch the seats up, but if you see somebody performing well, obviously see what it is they're doing specifically and share that with the team. Forecasting. Now that you've got good, clean data coming in and you've got all these line of sights to all these funnel metrics, you can now look at predictive analytics and understand if the business comes to you and says, we need to hire 100 of a certain job type in a certain market, and you can now say with a degree of authority, well, we're going to need X number of dollars to fill the top of the funnel and get the pipeline to get us the yield you're looking for at the bottom. This is just one of the templates that is out on the microsite. A/B testing. So as an ad agency, we do this all the time. A big thing we're doing currently is a lot of job title expansion and testing. So, the job comes through with a certain title. We can go look at market trends to see, well, what are candidates actually searching for, which is often different than what the recruiter set up the job title as, and to run A/B testing and then have proof points to come back not only to that recruiter, but anybody else posting those types of jobs to help better understand which job titles are going to draw you in the greatest amount of quality traffic. Testing creative ad unit, landing pages. Point being, when you've got a mechanism to collect data efficiently, then you can do a lot more real-time testing of your marketing. Start getting into some more advanced marketing tactics. Remarketing is nothing new. Many of you are probably doing this today, and you see this all the time. You visit a site, you leave the site, you get served up an ad that then draws you back in. We see this all the time in our everyday life. But when you now have good, sound audience data on your website, you can now do site remarketing, not just to everybody who visited your site, but you can break down just the people who looked at, let's say, the IT-related content and just market back to them. There's a remarketing tactic called matched audience. This is where you could upload people in your CRM that were a certain position who didn't then complete an application and market specifically to them on a place like LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a matched audience capability. And then there are other media buying platforms that allow you to do lookalike campaigns. This is where you could take, for example, all the IT hires that you made and upload them into a system and say, find me more people like this that have these same behavioral attributes and demographic information. The point being is when you're collecting good sound data, there's a lot of very advanced marketing tactics that you can employ. And LinkedIn has a couple that we'd love for you to check out. The last, if you're not with the programmatic, you need to get with the programmatic.
I'm with the programmatic.
I know, because you're with me. But the programmatic advertising capabilities of today are really changing the landscape, at least from an active job seeker and a job posting perspective. So programmatic advertising is really applicable to pay-for-performance channels, so your PPC or your CPC type advertisements. And it takes application data in real time and uses that to optimize the campaign. So somebody completes an application, that signals back to the programmatic media buying platform that that was a success, now find me more traffic like this. It also uses rules, and I'll explain more what that is, but it sets a lot of rules around which jobs actually make it into the campaigns. And then lastly is it ends up trading your jobs out on all of these sites based on where you're getting the best yield and performance. Think of like a stock portfolio. That's why we named our programmatic offering the PPC Portfolio Manager, because it's like a stock portfolio. There are rules, lots of rules when it comes to programmatic that you can set up. One of the most basic but important rules is the stop rule. So many of you who run PPC job ad campaigns will see that you get your report back at the end of the month or the end of the quarter, and there are certain jobs that are your more popular jobs just by nature that have cannibalized your budget and end up taking so many of the clicks and in turn the dollars, leaving yet still important recs with no traffic and no applications. So what programmatic does is it sets stop rules. When you set rules to say, okay, when a job gets to 12 applications, then take it out of the campaign, allow other jobs to feed in. This becomes one of the most proactive ways in which we talk about actioning your data, and it's actioning in real time. There's a human element of setting a lot of rules, but then there's a machine element where you have then a programmatic buying platform that's doing a lot of this work for you, executing the rules. The idea here is that investment follows performance, and it's not just on an annual basis when you're sitting down at contract time or in a quarterly business review. It's an everyday type of activity that the advertising campaigns are following, where you're getting not just cost per application, but ultimately trying to get to a cost per quality application. Bring it home, Eric.
Bring it home. So back to Elise real quick. Elise, we went through a lot of work to figure out that journey over the last 18 months, and it'd be great to do it for everybody to understand the big picture and how everybody found you and ended up being hired and how to find more people like them. It's impossible, right? You look at this, if you want to hire Elises all over the world, how would you possibly scale that? Which is why we came up with this presentation, is just to try and organize it. You look at this canvas, and it's, like I said, it's noisy out there, and the data comes in from all these disparate technologies or ways of collecting the data, and you're trying to make sense of it. So keep the diminishing returns in mind. You want to be here. And you might say, well, how do we know we reach the point of diminishing returns? And it's different for everybody. For me, myself, I've found myself going very late hours, very long hours, trying to find out data, and and then coming back, presenting the data, and it having this so what factor. You know, it didn't really add the value. I had the value already, but I kept going and going and going and going. And I wasn't answering the question that I set out to answer. So ask those questions, whether it's employer branding, diversity, media, and then stick to those answers. You get over here, and you're going to be going down a lot of rabbit holes, because here there are blind spots, and you'll never be able to get all of those blind spots. The rabbit holes go on forever, and I mentioned the so what factor. So we created this acronym to help organize how you would approach marketing or recruitment marketing analytics. It's collect, it's organize, and it's action. And it's these three things. Find the answers to those questions and stay on course.
We know one of the underlying themes of this week is work smarter, not harder. And hopefully you're able to take some things back to the office that allow you to do just that. You know, there's so many forward-looking activities that when you start to look at AI and a lot of the machine learning things that are being presented, but to pull off any of those, you need a basis. You need the foundation and the building blocks in place. So you need data, and you need it to be clean and consistent. And so before you can really embark on doing so many of the more advanced things in these years to come, you got to do some housekeeping, get things in order to allow you to ultimately work smarter, not harder, and free up time to do whatever it is you want to do. You want to Nerds in Paradise, or like Eric and myself, you can spend more time at your daughter's birthday parties. Thank you, everybody. We've got time for questions if anybody has any. Yes.
I think you can hear me. Hopefully you can hear me. Maybe this is better. Thank you. I thought that was great. I'm Jessica DeNice, Vice President of Recruitment Marketing for Fisher Investments. My question is about the assisted conversion. If I have no idea where to begin on trying to figure that out, what would be some recommendations of a good starting place?
So Google Analytics is the most widely used marketing analytics platform in the world. It's not probably unlikely that your site may already have it. In fact, when we usually audit a client's ecosystem, it's oftentimes there because it was put on by like your corporate webmaster and it's on your site, but you don't even know about it. And we find this to be the case quite a bit. So I would start there. If you don't, that's a free, easy to employ tool that's going to allow you to get to an assisted conversion. Awesome. Well, oh, yep.
Hi, Cedric from L'Oreal. So you were talking about at the end, like really at the end, you mentioned like cleanliness of data and housekeeping. How much would you say clean data is linked to process when it comes to recruiting? How much are recruiters using our tools, ATS, those job sites? How much of it is linked to how clean the data is going to be, and how much of that should be a focus when it comes to strategize about getting that clean data?
So cleaning data, I think, usually starts with, first of all, like what sources are in your ATS. You know, do a full export. Sometimes we'll see a client has 1,000+ different sources in their ATS, sites that don't even exist anymore. You know, Yahoo Hot Jobs and America's Job Bank. But so doing that sort of housekeeping, wholesale cleanup of your ATS. So what are the sources that are even available in there? Second is then what are the protocols that you then train your team on? You know, anybody who's placing links out there in ads, and obviously the recruiters are doing that each and every day, needs to be educated and follow those protocols. And so a lot of it is training and then follow up. And it's never going to be perfect. You know, I think even if you catch half of auto-populated source traffic and get that into your system, that's a good place to be. You're never going to get it all wired completely. But I think that was your question, hopefully. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.